us panelists. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. It's been actually a great opportunity for me and an extreme pleasure actually to be sharing this session on this panel. And this is actually our session one, and then appreciate your participation. And my sincere appreciation actually to the team of Institute of Logistics from CII, who have been always kind of keeping variety of ways to engage the community, so to say, and keep us always on the hook, because we always keep getting the mailers, and then mailers from actually teams from whether it is Shankar or Bhanumati ma'am. I mean, we are always kind of kept in fact on the toes, so to say, and they're always kind of trying to keep us engaged and then share information, and also have the discussions with the ministry and so on. I think it's been a great engagement. Thank you, Institute of Logistics CII team. Thank you for the opportunity as well. Now let's look into this panel discussion today. What we are looking at is the importance of the opportunity for a best-in-class fulfillment centers, right? Now, fulfillment center, if you really go back, I mean, I was actually kind of a part of the evolution of warehousing or the distribution centers or the fulfillment centers in India, so to say, even though I was actually living abroad for quite some time, and I've been with a global retail for more than a decade and a half. In the early 2001, I actually came back to India for about 16 months, or 17 months, in fact, duration, to set up the first ever contract logistics setup in India. And those days we used to have godowns actually, across the country. We used to have godowns, and then if you can imagine a truck actually, pulled out in front of the depot, and then there is actually a wooden platform or a wooden actually like a plank, which is used like a conveyor for the people to get inside the truck and then kind of, offload the bags and so on. It was a very, very basic and fundamental kind of, the working ways of actually the warehousing or the godown. So we ended up converting about, so many godowns into the warehouses. People actually think, what's this warehouse? It's a godown anyway. So we had to say, okay, warehouse is, this different. You need to have some, method to the madness, and you have some processes, and you've actually got people doing certain things. Most importantly, we started actually utilizing computers, and then how do you do the data management through the computers instead of the ledgers actually. So the so-called the clerks, booking clerks, and the office clerks, actually those roles were replaced by MIS guys, so to say, the data entry people and so on. So I remember, going around the country and establishing around 17 warehouses. Actually, we converted some actually factories in Coimbatore, removed all the, factory, the grouting bolts and all that, and then got it properly, like plastered and so on. So we ended up actually doing that first wave of, warehousing. Almost like, 15 years later, or even 10 years later, right? Come to 2010, you've already got a lot of good warehouses across the country with, best-in-class specifications, good flooring, PV structures, and then good heights and so on. So we had all these things, right? And the next 10 years is what I think, India has seen a dramatic change, transformational change in the warehousing side of things. Warehouses became distribution centers, they became fulfillment centers actually. Thanks to the advent of the e-commerce, and the giants actually really pushed this particular barrel quite a bit, and now we have hundreds of fulfillment centers right across the country. But what is a good fulfillment center, or what is best-in-class fulfillment centers? Why do we need actually so much of focus on fulfillment center? Mind you, thanks to COVID again, people who did not even probably, I would say, I mean, I would be offending, if I say they didn't know the spelling of supply chain or the warehousing or the logistics. Perhaps actually they didn't want to focus on that because they always thought it was a cost center. Guess what? Entire COVID, organizations, right from CEOs, everybody is talking about supply chain capability. Everybody is talking about logistics capability. Everybody is talking about what's a warehouse versus distribution center versus fulfillment center. How do we improve the pick, pack, and ship? People have been actually talking this language, right? So I guess supply chain actually and logistics industry has got the biggest boost in the last probably 12 to 15 months, thanks to COVID, as I said earlier. Now, fulfillment center operations has become now the nucleus of every organization. Whether you like it or not, omni-retail is actually here to stay. Whether you like it or not, online presence is actually going to be very, very vital to every organization. Therefore, the better the fulfillment centers, the more competent fulfillment capabilities, the efficiencies actually fulfillment center is definitely going to actually decide the whole survival of the business itself, in some sense. So before I actually go further, I would like to introduce my panel, eminent panel, in fact. I guess starting with Binoy, Debelia, who's already been on the first panel already, is already been there. Binoy is known for speed, precision, and multitasking. He's got about 20 years experience, in fact, out of which, cross-functional, and domain expertise around manufacturing to business development. And he's also been handling a lot of key accounts. He's been, I think also possessing a lot of entrepreneurial experience, driving global expansion business and so on. Binoy is now playing a vital role in setting up Armstrong production systems. I'm sure we're going to know more about Binoy and then about the automation, that the Armstrong is going to bring to the table. So welcome, Binoy. Thank you for joining. Let me go to the next speaker, who's Ankur Singha. Ankur has been part of Mahindra Group since 2010 and has held myriad responsibilities from strategy planning, sales, business excellence, and now heading business vertical. And Ankur also was a team leader at Tata Strategic Management Group, and that's in the chemicals and energy practice. He is also a PG DBM from SP Jain and a mechanical engineer from Mumbai University. Ankur, welcome to the panel. We also have Neha Parekh, which used to be unusual. I mean, I couldn't find actually a lady logistician or a supply chain person maybe 10 years ago, but nowadays you can see a lot of actually women heading this logistics, actually the function, which is a great actually, welcome sign to the country in terms of development. Neha is a competent supply chain professional with almost 10 years experience across business analytics, supply chain optimization, demand planning, inventory planning, supply planning, production planning, and Excel modeling, sales forecasting, and supply network analytics. She's a seasoned planning professional, and she's also got experiences in project management, process excellence, supply chain management, NPD, portfolio management, and so on. She is currently heading the logistics and customer service at Godrej. Welcome, Neha, to the panel. And we have Sandeep Narayan as the Chief Retail Officer from Shopper Stop. Sandeep and me, we have also worked together for quite a good time. Sandeep has actually had a very accomplished career, in fact, in retail and diverse market experiences in not only in India, South Asia, then also from GCC countries, and recently from Southeast Asia as well. He focuses on growth, transformation, and day-to-day business operations. He's an expert in strategic planning with tactical expertise, honed over extensive 20 years of industry experience. He's been a positive entrepreneurial attitude. He's showing a positive entrepreneurial attitude to build a long-term value within actually the company. Again, Sandeep has had not only the India as well as global experience in terms of apparel, retail, and so on. So Sandeep, welcome to the panel. Now, this is a brief introduction of the panel. Now, I'd like to actually invite Binoy to do the lead presentation and then take us through the Armstrong services. Binoy? John, do we have Binoy for the lead presentation? All right, so what we'll do while John is actually looking for Binoy and then kind of setting up with that, let's actually go ahead with the topic for the day. Now, if you really look at it, when you talk about best-in-class fulfillment centers, what do we talk about? No, what do we know about fulfillment centers? How are they different from a traditional warehouse or a distribution center? I mean, the moment we talk about fulfillment center, one aspect comes to our mind is their automation, the level of automation, right? I mean, earlier we used to have some of the smaller material handling equipment, such as whether it is actually a pallet mover or a battery operated pallet mover or a stacker or even actually a BT, some of the, in fact, pallet loading, mechanization and so on. And a lot of racked warehousing and all that, they were all part of distribution centers, in the early probably 2000 and late 2010 and so on, right? The last probably 5 to 8 years, we have seen a huge level of automation and mechanization within the warehouses, which is a part of fulfillment center. What's the difference actually? What's been the difference? The main difference would be in a typical warehouse or a distribution center, we would do a lot of B2B business. And there was quite a little bit of B2C business, whereas fulfillment centers are predominantly B2C places. It could be a company-owned captive, distribution center or fulfillment center, which is owned by the company and operated by them, or it could be a third-party logistics service provider providing the fulfillment centers, or it even could be a composite fulfillment center catering to a lot of players in the marketplace. So therefore, any fulfillment centers, one of the first things that comes out to our mind is how capable are we in terms of our order cycle. So why is the order cycle so important? Is because we are actually delivering all the B2C orders. Our customer could be in Guwahati, my warehouse could be in Bangalore. Customer could be in Jammu Kashmir, my warehouse could be in Hyderabad. Customer could be in Trivandrum, my warehouse could be in Gurgaon. So customer really doesn't care about where is your warehouse, where is your fulfillment center. They would really like to know how quickly can you service my order, because that's again one of the probably harshest truth that we have actually learned since the advent of the e-commerce, which is I was actually mentioning casually to Neha earlier, my co-panelist, in the beginning of the session or prior to the session, apparel customers, for me, customer is the queen. Why it's the queen? Because my customer is predominantly a lady. The young lady who has actually got the smartphone in her hands. Maybe the young lady with the young kids and so on. And also she has, husband and in-laws and so on at home. But who's the main shopper for me? It is that lady with that smartphone. I mean, she's the one, she buys it for herself. She buys for the kids. She buys for actually everyone in the household. And she also, buys, a few things for her husband because his credit card actually she's paying. So she has to also buy a few things for him. So she is my main customer in terms of, B2C or even the online or the e-commerce actually business goes, or even the apparel, at large goes. Now, fulfillment center activities are known to everybody now. The only thing is every day, it's Amazon or Flipkart or Myntra or actually Landmark Group or whoever. The only thing what is left out is the front cover page of the newspaper saying that my pick rate, packing rate, shipping rate. That's the only thing left right now. Otherwise, everything is known to the customer. So my customer knows very clearly what is shipping, what is packing, what is actually, pick, pack and ship, and then who's the delivery person, all of those things. So she's highly educated. What does that mean? I don't have any buffers, right? I can't hide anywhere. She says, has it been picked? Has it been packed? Has it been shipped? If it is not, so she will actually give us a bit of a wrap on that, right? So we need to be on top of the game. Now, what are some of the high level things that you need to look at for who has got the best in class fulfillment centers, or what is the best network of fulfillment center? Maybe the location, maybe the infrastructure, their capability, their manpower, and then the order cycle time, and also the logistics impact capability, plus most importantly, the system capability. So these are all some of the, I think, the initial probably thoughts, what I'm actually trying to, talk about in best in class fulfillment centers. Now, John, do we have Binoy with the lead presentation?
Yeah, well, there is some technical issue for joining. So he just joined. He'll be sharing the.
No problem. Just let us know.
He has joined. He has joined already.
Okay. Is he ready with the presentation?
Yeah, Anil, apologies for joining late. There was some technical hitch at the background, so somehow we could not join. But yes, all prepared and all set. Yeah.
No problem. Then you can go ahead with your presentation. The briefing has already been done. Binoy.
Sure. Great. No problem. I'll share the screen. Yeah.
Yeah, please. Yeah. I'm sure there's no automation in that.
Yeah, I hope my screen is visible now, right?
Yeah, perfect. Go ahead.
Great. So, yeah, good morning, everyone. Today, I'll be taking you through a presentation of winning fulfillment centers. So it's exactly going to be about what earlier the fulfillment centers used to look about. And with the growth in the e-commerce segment, how do we foresee the new upcoming fulfillment centers look like? It's important, like, first to understand what exactly is the e-commerce landscape in India as on date. We all know that the growth in e-commerce segment in India has been a double-digit growth with a CAGR of almost 50% for the last 5 years. If we take the numbers of 2015 and what we stand at 2020 today, it has been a remarkable growth. And for the next 5 years, again, we expect it to grow at a massive stage. And we expect it to touch almost $100 billion from the sector standpoint. And we also noticed that the 55% of the overall sales has happened in October 2020 during the festive sales. Let it be the Big Billion Days or let it be the Diwali sales. And majority, 55% of the sale has come from the tier 2 cities. At the same time, we also see a great push for the e-grocery segment in the e-commerce landscape as well. With the COVID pandemic coming into picture, people are now changing their buying patterns. They are now adopting for even buying groceries online, and rather than going down and looking out to the new kirana shops, etc. At the same time, we also see that there is a social commerce also taking place, and it's playing a very important role now. With a lot of digital platforms, people are now looking out for buying, etc. So overall, we see that there is a rampant increase in the overall volumes that has been handled by the e-commerce companies in India. And this buying pattern, we expect to further change and further grow in the upcoming times. So if these things are continuously growing and at this fast pace, what are exactly the challenges that the e-commerce companies are facing from a supply chain standpoint? Firstly is the market reach. As I said earlier, that the tier 2 cities have contributed to the 55% of the sales last year. So the target is to touch more than 20,000 pin codes across the country. The expectations of the clients are now increasing day by day. They are focusing more on a lot of customer experience, single day delivery. For the grocery, they are looking out for few hours delivery. When these volumes are increasing, the demands are increasing. At the same time, there is a tremendous pressure on the cost as well, because we can't let the operating expenditures keep on increasing day on day, because that's taking a hit on the bottom line of each of these e-commerce companies. At the same time, there is a big amount of complexity considering the overall omni-channel diversification that's there in the overall supply chain for the e-commerce vertical. We all know that the rate of returns, it's almost 18 to 20% of the shipments that's going out from the e-commerce supply chain, we are having 20% returns. And handling returns itself is a big challenge and is a business in altogether. So, and they're contributing to a big dent in the overall profitability. At the same time, the growth at which the e-commerce is growing and the overall infrastructure currently where we are, there is a little bit of a mismatch. If you see, it's not been able to cope up with the growth at which the segment is growing. So poor infrastructure is one of the overall challenges, let it be in terms of the warehouses, let it be in terms of the overall, the road, rail, and the air network, etc. So overall, there has been a challenge in the infrastructure. And at this same time, the most important thing is the Indian customer. We all know that the Indian customers are impatient. They are difficult to please. It's not like the way the Western side it is. It's not as easy as that. It's a little bit difficult to handle the Indian customer. So what exactly are the pain areas if we look at in a much more precise manner at the fulfillment center operations? Throughputs. Handling the increase in the throughput has been a big pain area for them. Errors in the sortation, ensuring that the right shipment is going to the right destination, the right pin code. We all know that the buying pattern and the overall volumes in the e-commerce sector has been a wave. During the peak periods, you'll have a surge. During the non-peak days, we'll have a little bit of a low volume. So it's very much important to have a flexibility built into the entire system from an operation standpoint. At the same time, the variety of goods that the fulfillment centers are handling is each and everything. So there could be a lot of damages and pilferages that's happening in the overall fulfillment center, which we need to tackle around. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, as also that infrastructure is one of the areas which is still a big challenge for the overall fulfillment center. So at the same time, the the another difficulty that comes along with the infrastructure is the poor traceability and the visibility. Currently, the operations are basically more focused towards the scanning in and the scanning out, but we are not being able to trace and have a clear-cut visibility about, okay, where the shipment is exactly, at what stage in the fulfillment center, and if it has a cutoff time, can we do some operations by which we can meet the cutoff times, etc. All these increase in the volume has actually made a good amount of dependency on skilled manpower as well as on the quantum of the manpower that's needed to handle this volume. And with an increase in the manpower comes a very much important point is the high touch points. So with the COVID wave coming into picture, we all have understood that arranging manpower is going to be a big pain, and we can't link our business potential and volume with the availability of manpower. And at the same time, from a lights off warehouse, the now theme is going towards a touchless warehouse, where people are trying to focus upon the hygiene standpoint. They're focusing upon this sanitation standpoint in terms of minimizing the overall touch points from the time a shipment is actually being picked up till the time is getting delivered to the end customer. And at the same time, building a warehouse is not that easy. So utilizing the overall space that we have and how we are able to turn around or increase maximum velocity from the same space, that's one of the areas where the fulfillment centers are facing challenges. If one fulfillment center is handling 3 lakh shipments, if the next year the forecast says it's going to handle 4.5 lakh shipments, we can build a new fulfillment center in a year because the overall capex as well as the opex will go for a toss. So how well we are being able to utilize the same space and handle the same volume is something which is one of the pain areas. How are these challenges impacting the overall business? First, the high touch point. Second, the error in the operations in terms of sortation errors, or let it be damages, or it could be about being inefficient or being not productive enough to meet the business growth. All these challenges put together is actually leading to a drop in your market share. The other challenges, which is impacting the business, is the revenue leakage. If you're not being able to capture the right volume, you're not being able to capture the right weight, and you've not been able to utilize your vehicle to the utmost efficient way. All these is what it is increasing your overall operating expenditures. That's not bringing in efficiency in your operations. And at the end, it's leading to your losses in your profitability. So basically, then the point comes that what exactly are the necessities of building a smart fulfillment center? So now the time has come that we focus on some specific areas by which we can convert our traditional fulfillment center into much more smart fulfillment center. 3 areas where we can focus upon: one is agility, second, scalability, and third is data visibility. So when I talk about agility, it basically means how responsive we are from an operation standpoint to adapt to the changing warehouse world. As our consumer buying patterns are changing day by day, our product spectrum is changing day by day. We need to have a system and our operations built in such a manner that we are able to handle these fluctuations and these different changing needs. At the same time, we need to keep an eye on the future. As I said, that the Indian e-commerce segment or the market is planned to reach almost $100 billion in the next 4 years. And to keep an eye on this future, we need to have the scalability factor built while we are designing the fulfillment center. How, keeping in the same area, we are able to turn around more number of shipments is something which we need to focus upon. At the same time, data visibility is something which has been a point which is not being kept in focus in the past years, but this is one important aspect which is going to drive business. What exactly are the shipments coming inside our warehouses, keeping an eye on the product spectrum, where the shipments are getting shipped out, which are the areas that are contributing to the maximum shipment dispatches, which is the area that we need to focus upon for the next fulfillment center. Data is going to drive business. And it's very important to know and understand the different aspects of your warehouse. And data not only from a business standpoint, but even from an efficiency or from an operation standpoint as well. To understand, like, okay, my dispatch is becoming a bottleneck of the overall operations. So I need to bring in the right automation at the dispatch end so that the bottleneck is then shifted to another thing and I can focus around over there. So these are the three necessities for building a smart fulfillment center. Now, which are the areas that we need to keep in focus for an operational excellence standpoint in a fulfillment center? So we've categorized 4 different areas in the overall operations that's happened in the fulfillment center. To start with is basically the overall internal movement of the shipment from the time it's actually entering inside the warehouse till the time it's getting actually shipped outside the warehouse. So what's important is that how quickly we are able to ship out the good or the parcel in the fulfillment center. Product profiling is one of the important aspects which is responsible for locking your revenue leakages. It could be in terms of weight, it could be in terms of your volume capturing. The second most area that we need to keep in focus is the overall picking and the put away process, because we see that a lot of manpower is being deployed to pick material or put away the material, and from an order fulfillment standpoint, from a packaging standpoint, etc. So we need to focus upon on bringing in the right technology by which we reduce the overall manpower count. At the same time, we reduce the time in which the overall process is being completed. Third pain area, and in which the area which we can focus upon, is the overall sortation system and the consolidation of the goods. In the traditional way, we had these operators and we had the pigeonholes where they used to sort the goods and then they used to bag it and then ship it out. But with an increase in the overall volume and the shipment count, it's not possible to do it with the help of operators. While you can increase the number of count of people who are handling this operation, but along with an increase in the count will be increasing the errors that these operators would be bringing into picture, and you will be having a good amount of dependency on them. And if any such wave comes over, it will be difficult to manage the volumes. And the fourth most important thing, we say that the overall velocity that your dock is able to manage, that's the area and that's the volume you're actually the entire fulfillment center is being able to manage. So the overall inbound and the outbound operations, these are the 4 areas which we've shortlisted could be an area of focus for an operational excellence in the fulfillment center. So the question comes that how do we do that? What technology do we have in place by which we can actually bring in operational excellence? So when I talk about the case of the inbound and the outbound process, we have the telescopic conveyors, we have the truck loading systems and the dispatch managements, which can actually improve your efficiencies and help you to reduce your number of docks. It will help you to number of people who are manning the show at the docks, and at the same time increase your turnaround and increase the number of vehicles that the dock or the number of vehicles that the fulfillment center is being able to process in a day. At the same time, we have the right sortation systems, let it be a loop sorter or let it be the linear sorters, your secondary sortation with the help of PTLs, with the help of dimensioning weighing systems. So these all systems help you to avoid dependency on manpower for your sortation, for your data capturing, for your dimensioning and volumetric systems. At the same time, for your picking and put away, we have the right systems like the goods to person, we have the shuttle systems. All these systems are built to handle these large volumes. Let it be for a grocery vertical, let it be for a retail segment, let it be for the e-commerce vertical. We have different systems that help you out to handle these volumes. The time has come that we look from a hard automation to a flexible automation, because the benefits that the flexible automation would be coming into picture, it would be scalable, it's flexible, it's not restricted in your movement of material and man inside the fulfillment center. So the autonomous mobile robots, the AMRs, is a new upcoming technology, which is something which is going to be a game changer for people to handle the spikes. So if there is a Diwali peak coming over, you increase the number of bots that would be handling your peak. When there is a lean period, you reduce the number of bots. So you're much more scalable, you're much more flexible. And at the same time, you're even reducing or you're keeping a control and an eye on your CapEx as well as your OpEx. The heart of all these technologies is the right software in place, the right WMS and the WCS system. How we are being able to actually capture data from an inventory analytics standpoint, from your dispatch manager's standpoint, from your video analytics standpoint, and how these data are helping you to build in efficiency as well as help you to take business assisted decision-making abilities. So what exactly is the role of automation for a future-ready FC? As I said, that the three things: flexible, data-driven, and automized. These are the three areas that we'll be focusing upon from a future-ready FC standpoint. So if I talk about flexibility, it talks about scaling up not only from a volume standpoint, but from your peak volume standpoint, how easily we are able to handle the seasonality and the peaks. Are we able to address a wider market by increasing the number of reach and the pin codes? How are we able to accommodate the overall complexity order profiles and the variety of products that each and every day is increasing? And at the same time, in the same given space, how we are being flexible enough to handle maximum volume. The second most important point is about the data being driven. Data should flow along with the material. Business intelligence driven decision making, that's where is your next 2 year, 3 years plans can be planned upon. It helps you to assess forecasting in terms of where the new fulfillment center needs to be built, or help you to analyze your efficiencies, etc. And give you a complete traceability and visibility in terms of your operations, where the shipment is lying inside your FC, etc. The important thing that we also need to touch point is that automation and robotics is going to be playing a very big role in creating a future ready FC. What are we focusing on? We'll be focusing upon reducing your touch points from the time it enters inside the FC and the time it's getting loaded inside your dispatch vehicle. We'll be creating situations by which we are creating an environment in which we are independent on the overall manpower skill as well as on the count. The whole focus is about with an increase in volume. As in the earlier sessions, one of the guys also mentioned that the average shipment cost is actually reduced from $30 to $17, which means that the value of the shipment is going down with an increase in volume, which means that there is going to be a tremendous pressure on the e-commerce companies to reduce their OPEX. And that's where automation is going to help them in terms of optimizing and increasing the overall efficiencies. At the same time, we'll help you all to increase your overall velocity. When we are talking about increase in velocity, it's important that we keep an eye on error-free dispatches, because we can't have a wrong shipment going to the wrong pin code, because return logistics, it's a cost in itself. At the same time, automation will bring in unparalleled speed, accuracy, and operation efficiency. So this is basically how automation is going to play a very vital role in creating a future-ready FC. So some of the questions which we need to consider and which we need to think upon is that, is your FC future, is it future-ready or not? And how do we ask these questions? First, what is the role of software that your current FC is playing from an integration standpoint, from a business decision standpoint? Is your business being driven from the intelligence that your fulfillment center is actually giving you? Are you able to do a virtual roadmap in terms of what your new future FC should look like? Is your system modular design? Is it scalable? Is it flexible? And at the same time, do you have the right partner with you to help you out with all these things, so that you focus on your existing business of pleasing your customers, but at the back end, you have the right partner to support you for making your FC future ready. With this, I would like to end my session and the presentation. And I hope I have been able to give you a sense about what exactly are the future fulfillment centers going to be looked upon, how technology will play a very vital role, what are the areas that we need to focus upon from an operational and efficiency standpoint, and how having the right partner and the right software is vital enough to attain the goals that we are looking at from a future FC standpoint.
Thank you, Binoy. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I guess, you've kind of, let all the cats out of your bag, I guess, in some sense, because I thought actually I'll just get my panelists to, kind of share their experiences. Anyway, never too late, I guess. Let me actually, let me invite my panelists actually to kind of, share their personal experiences, because what Binoy has actually given us is actually the benchmark kind of a situation, or to go to a place, what is the best in class kind of automation or automated fulfillment center. Let me now invite my actually panelists, in fact, to share their personal experiences So let me start with Sandeep. If you can actually share some of your observations, not only from the Indian context, but also I remember, one of the probably best in class, $1 billion dirham, actually the fulfillment center that you were part of it in, Middle East as well in Dubai. So if you can give us a sense of, what's the kind of a best mix of automation and mechanization, and what are the challenges, challenges for embracing automation versus, if there are any manual operation, inhibitions and so on. So Sandeep, if you can start with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Anil. Thank you, Binoy, for setting the context, and thank you, Anil, also setting the context for this panel. The first point which I want to build on is that while fulfillment center, like we said, also touched upon saying that it's more towards understanding the customer, right? So idea is that the evolution of customer behavior has led to, there has to be a cause for the fulfillment center to change and evolve. And the fundamental cause for the change is that the behavior of our consumer has changed. So everything around warehousing and the go down days were very self-centered in terms of being a solution provider for a logistics partner. Now fulfillment centers are more because of the consumer needs. The needs have changed. The evolution of the needs also forced a lot of organizations to relook at how they're fulfilling. And today, fulfillment center, like while we will be, and I come from a operating background, so I'll try and bring about the consumer side of things. Who are we finally going to service and how is the core focus, which I think in my earlier organization also, and in my current portfolio also has been the core focus on driving change on fulfillment center and automation. While it's not necessarily only building infrastructure, right? Infrastructure, like even Binoy touched upon, infrastructure is one part of the whole automation journey and mechanization journey. The other thing is on the ecosystem. I think the building of the ecosystem and the network of partnerships is something which was the core focus when the change and transformation of the digital infrastructure or the physical infrastructure, even in my earlier organization, Landmark Group, was done at Dubai to bring the mega distribution center. The core genesis was how was the network of partnerships built, and it started with the right implementation of the ERP mechanism, improving our planning structures, enhancing forecasting, building a financial planning mechanism which would finally cater to a change in the way we were going to service our customers. So now, even when it comes back to Southeast Asia, where I was last, we were looking at imports, right, in terms of how we were consolidating stocks for a small business and how our fulfillment partners across China and Bangladesh were also synced up with what we had as an opportunity to service customers. So while my perspective is very simple to set the context, is that the future is to be driven by looking at outside in. So what is the consumer wanting and how is the fulfillment center built to service that, and it will change by industry types. Flexibility of servicing industry types is something which automation and mechanization can bring into a fulfillment center to be able to cater to a diverse kind of industry. Sustainability and the effort doing all of this is also going to be critical, because at the end of the day, you could have a large setup coming in and a lot of automation. What happens to human capital? So is it important at the same time not to look at reskilling, right? Of building of, so when fulfillment centers are built, how are we reskilling the talent available, right? Which is also part of the roadmap and journey one should have. And these are the things which are the questions which every organization is answering. Cost of capitalization and cost of investments is something which is going to continue to be there. But idea is then putting three steps. One, the change is because of the customer need and the way we are servicing our customers, which I think Anil also touched upon. Second is that it is no more an individual operating cycle. It is an ecosystem which is being built, and it's an ecosystem which has a network of partnerships. Third is in terms of people, and we need to understand that talent and skill is a resource which is extremely rare now when you start becoming an automated approach to overall fulfillment. Another point which I'm leaving as a thought for the panel is that fulfillment centers are not necessarily only going to be large centers. Today in retail, where we want to reach customers faster, our stores for that matter are also becoming semi-fulfillment centers. How is that going to transform as a support network for the large fulfillment bay is also something we are also looking at and exploring, because we are using inventory where as close to consumers to be able to service. And that's part of the sustainability journey also. Why take long distance routes only when you can have a journey which is closer to the consumer and obviously more effective and efficient? So these are things which I will leave the panel with as a first thought.
Thank you, Sandeep. I think, they're all very, very important points. And I think, somewhere actually when I was talking to some of my counterparts from abroad, I think they were talking about having a mini fulfillment center within the shopping centers. I mean, using actually these places, in fact, for the marketplace, in fact, service provider, the marketplace, online players, they will be sending it to actually sending their bulk into these the shopping center, so-called. I mean, imagine. I mean, could you ever have imagined a warehouse or a fulfillment center in the middle of a shopping center? Well, that might actually be the case, in fact, in the near future itself. Thank you for sharing that, those experiences, in fact. Now, let me go to Neha. Actually, she's been, handling with the consumer goods side of things, right? For quite some time. So Neha, what are your experiences in terms of actually automation, mechanization, and then, manual versus automation and so on?
Thank you, Anil, and thank you, Sandeep, I think, for setting the context right. Like you rightly said, Anil, when we begin, the journey from go down to a warehouse took us a while in the Indian context, but from warehouse to fulfillment center as a journey has been much more rapid, and COVID has been the right catalyst in terms of driving that journey through. A lot of things that has changed. One is the ever-changing customer demand, because now it's not about only a metro customer expecting a delivery happening in 6 hours. Even a customer sitting in remote location like say a Jammu or a Guwahati or somewhere in Pondicherry expects that I need a delivery in 12 hours. And this 12 hours also as a benchmark has now been changing, because in some locations, some companies trying to test even a 2-hour delivery. That latest experiences change that experience to in-store buying, where you are paying the money and you're getting the goods delivered then and there right away. So that's what we are competing on to. As consumer product industries or FMCG industries, we say that while we call ourselves as FMCG, but there's one world outside which is even rapidly moving customer industry. The preferences are changing. My customers are now getting segmented. There are different proliferation or segments of industry that is happening. There's still a very wide, vast customer base, which is still a normal Kirana route. But the same country, because what is happening is we see it also as an avenue to reach customers where we are not reaching directly. I don't have to build an extensive distributor network. I can go through it. And there are most of the companies who are also doing a direct D2C now. So I will continue to have a segmented approach. And as you rightly said, and what even Sandeep briefly touched upon, we don't see fulfillment centers as something that has to be big, something that has to be fully automated. But what in essence we mean is that fulfillment has to be, how can you shorten your time from an order receipt to servicing it to the customer? And by customer, I'm not meaning my retail outlet. I'm meaning my end customer. How quickly can you make that, from the demand sensing to the demand fulfillment, how does that transaction happen as quickly as possible? And other thing that is also impacting us is there will always be a constant pressure on inventory, right? You would want to go on reducing your inventory because there's increased awareness on freshness. And it's working capital locked. So how can you make it faster? And it is inventory across the chain, be it at my vendor's end, at my end, or even at my distributor or retail end. Because the amount of SKUs that a retail store used to keep has gone up. I mean, we were just looking at some data that in early 2001, any average retail store used to hold around 2,000 different variety of SKUs. That is now touched around 12,000 different SKU variants or combination that the same store, same sizes carry. So see the amount of proliferation that is happening, even as us as company, the amount of SKU proliferation that is happening, and this is here to stay. Because what happens is customers are asking different kind of choices. Earlier, it used to be very segmented. You have a premium customer buying premium packs larger, but now you have 10 different sizes of the same premium brand, because there is somebody who wants to try the same pack, but can't just take that change. Overall brand stickiness is changing because customers are willing to change different type of packs. So as FMCG, yes, we see fulfillment center to be the key initiative for us to drive those demand through, drive those initiative. And other thing that COVID has also made us realize is manpower availability is also becoming a challenge. So you would be forced to automate, right? Because if you don't get people, and other is our timings are shrinking. Now, if you see most of the southern state right now are operating only from 6 to 10 a.m., right? Otherwise, I would have at least 12 to 15 hours of working at my warehouses or at my distribution centers. Unfortunately, because of government norm, but your demand continues to be buoyant, you have to continue serving them. So how can you crunch that much of time to just 6 to 10 hours? We are adopting different ways of putting, but that is also forcing us to automate. Earlier, it was always about cost versus what is the return you are bringing when it comes to warehousing, and it would never make sense because the initial investment upfront would be so high, and most of the companies, I mean, someone like us who are also listed and has returns that we look into for shareholders, you would say in 3 years that has to break even. So that will never come up. But now in COVID scenario, if you consider it is more as business continuity than just breaking even as cost, automation is helping me maintain business continuity. It is helping me manage compliance also, because you want your people to be maintaining social distance. Like across our warehouses, we are now distributing the same team into 3 parts and asking them to work on rotating, so that at least there's BCP in terms of human capital. We are doing like order processing, which used to happen mostly at your DCs, right, has now moved to a centralized place. So a lot of operations are now getting de-linked. And again, with this many SKUs, this much of focus on freshness, it is, I mean, it's impossible for us to manually continue doing the way we are doing. So and the last bit I would say is also the availability of ecosystem of resources. Right, because earlier, even to find an 18 feet height warehouses in even location like Binoy, say 10 years ago, was very, very difficult.
Yes.
But now every new warehouse that is coming is at least a 21 feet height. Right?
Correct.
So overall ecosystem, or the grade of warehouses that are being built, or the grade of infra that is being, like earlier you used to have a custom built warehouse where you will go and give them specification. I need this many dogs, I need a staging area, I need, but now it is given. You don't have to give those specifications. Even initiatives like being fire compliant, having those logistics park being set up, even in cities, smaller cities like tier 2, tier 3 cities, like say Ahmedabad or Bangalore or Hyderabad, is improving. So the overall ecosystem availability is changing. So an upgrade from a grade C to a grade A is very natural, and the costs are not exorbitant. So I feel this is here to stay, and COVID has played a very good catalyst in terms of enabling that movement from a warehouse to becoming a full-fledged distribution center or a fulfillment center. And we are also looking into setting up small FSL centers very close to our customers. So it need not be small. It may be a small 2,000 square feet fulfillment center where you go and say that I segment my supply chain. Certain category of product, I'll give you a service in 6 hours. Certain category of product, I may give you in 24 hours, or I may give it in 40 hours. So the concept of Amazon Prime is not limited only to Amazon. As companies also, we are exploring that.
Sure.
And a lot of work happening on that side.
Great. Neha, thank you. Actually, that was really quite a an eye opener actually for me, because I mean I always looked at companies such as Godrej, a traditional consumer products company, right? So you always operated actually with the C&Fs, and then probably consumer products companies were some of the forefront. I mean, they were at the forefront actually in terms of Indian penetration goes. I mean, there is not probably a small village where you can't find Godrej products, right? So just a sub question to you, Neha. From those days of C&F, and then the traditional supply chain model was built for people like you, so to say FMCG models, right? It's a manufacturer, wholesaler, distributor, then retailer, then the end consumer. Now all that middle tiers seem to have actually disappeared, right? Like what you were saying, you are actually trying to set small fulfillment centers and so on. So how has the journey been? Because you used to operate through C&F agents and all that. Now, are you seeing mother warehouses and then kind of, smaller kind of hubs and so on? Because I remember even way back in 2000 or even early, late 1990s or whatever, globally, like I remember working for Woolworths, we shut down 32 DCs and then we brought it down to 8 regional distribution centers. And we had 2 national distribution centers. This was in Australia for Woolworths actually. So we actually went that way. But then e-commerce, because it is B2C, order economics and all those things, most importantly, like what you said about the timing of the delivery. Because in villages, let's accept that tier 4, tier 5 places, they don't have the money and wherewithal like the city people like us to actually come and stack things in our pantry. I mean, for all they know, they may not even have a kitchen actually. It is one room, house and things like that. So their buying frequency is much frequent, right? So how has actually the Godrej, journey been from those old actually days into the latest kind of a fulfillment center, kind of a hub and spoke model?
So I think we continue to do a hub and spoke still. So if you ask me, it's a journey, and we are beginning to be part of this journey.
Right.
The CNF model still stays, because you cannot suddenly move from one to other as a movement. But
Sure.
but as I said, the code has been a strong catalyst. If I was seeing that transition happening in a decade, now I see it happening in 5 years. And other thing that is happening in my retail ecosystem is now I'm reaching directly to retailers. Earlier,
Yes.
I used to, and it's not because my distributor ecosystem is not that strong. It is that my retailer today has multiple avenues through which they are buying. They
Yeah.
are no more going only to my distributor. They also have an Udan. They also have a GeoMart. They also have a cash and carry through which different formats through which they are going and buying. So that ecosystem is changing. And other is the availability of, reach that we have for direct. Like Ankur would add, but one of the
Right.
leading players there is Mahindra Logistics, right? Who has made direct to retail one of the first pilots on direct to retail, right? And anything that to me as a company gives direct access to the offtakes that is happening at the end consumer level, we would be more than happy to do that. So that journey of direct to retail is something that is forcing me to think in a different direction. And like I said, that we may never have, say today, if I have 35, 36 CFAs, it's not going to change to 8 only. No, that's not going to happen. We
Right.
still have a long way as FMCG industry to go there, because otherwise my lead times will go up. But
Sure.
I surely see consolidation happening. We may have 8 big DCs or fulfillment centers, but we might have, say, instead of 30 different locations, some 50 different FSL locations, which are next to retail or dark stores, as we call it, and they continue to service. Because my customer expectation remains the same, that I need my order to be fulfilled in 12 hours of time. And as you rightly said, a retailer is not stocking up as much as they used to stock earlier, because he
Yes.
now has wider assortment to store.
Yes.
So that investment window is going to shrink. So,
Yeah.
but my customer expectation doesn't change. We are somewhere in middle. I would say I still have a CNFA model, but that journey towards fulfillment center has only become rapid.
Great. Thank you, Neha. Thanks for such a, very, very, like hands-on kind of, explanation on those things. Ankur, thanks for your patience actually. And I think, we now definitely would like to get an opinion from the other side of the table, so to say, from a service provider, right? I think from Mahindra perspective, actually, how has, e-commerce kind of, given you kind of a leg up in terms of automating the warehouses, and how have you been managing, with multiple marketplace, giants and so on? So if you could share some experience actually, with us, please.
Sure. So I think when you look at fulfillment centers, there are multiple, constraints or multiple options which you'll have to keep in mind, right? So for example, which category of e-commerce are you actually dealing with, right? Whether it is, in terms of core consumer electronics, whether it's apparel based, or now, as Binoy pointed out, whether it's grocery based, right? And the level of complexities in each of the in each of the fulfillment chain is very different, right? In terms of whether it is the size of the shipments, weight of shipments, and with grocery, even temperature of the shipments, right? So that's the level of complexity which we are dealing with, and obviously all these do get factored in terms of what kind of solution we actually prescribe to our customers, right? Obviously, there are, as Neha pointed out, there are different location level constraints, right? Why would you want to automate at a place where there is 10 hours of power cut and you are actually dependent on diesel for operating, right?
Yeah.
So I think there are multiple factors, right? Or as she pointed out, height of the building, right? Number of docks. Not only that, even in terms of flooring, right? What kind of flooring is available, right? There is only very recently that grade A buildings are getting specified, and even within grade A, the kind of floor which we adopt, right? That itself is is actually under tremendous amount of development, right? Even in terms of whether it's floor bearing capacity, flatness of the surface, so on and so forth, right? Obviously, the third important factor is, which I think Binoy alluded to, right? In e-commerce, a lot of the sale happens within, I would say, 4 cycles, right? Or 4 peaks. You have May, you have predominantly the Independence Day, you have Diwali, and then you have, you have the January 26th kind of a sale, right? And therefore, there are certain categories where you see demand going up 10 times, right? While your infrastructure is remaining the same, right? So then what are the solutions which we work with customers? There are pop-up capacities, flex capacities come in. Now, obviously for this short time duration, do you want to invest in that kind of automation, right? Or would you actually have some sort of fungible mechanization in place, right? So there are multiple factors which go into it, right? Another important thing is about the manpower, right? While we focus only on the labor part of it, but to actually have these kind of automation working for you seamlessly, you also require the right set of engineers, multi-skilled technicians, right? Whether those are available, and they are available on back end call, because you cannot afford a downtime. You have to fulfill customer orders in XYZ number of hours, right? And and there are and that timeline is only shrinking, right? And apart from that, what are you automating, right? What are the different processes within the fulfillment center that you want to automate or mechanize? And again, Binoy touched upon it. It's whether it's the inbound, outbound side, where we have seen the maximum adoption of mechanization in terms of loading, unloading, right? Or or on the sorting, right? Once the order gets picked and it needs to be sorted, picked and packed, and then it needs to be sorted. And obviously now we are seeing a lot of adoption on the order picking and packing side, right? And again, there are different solutions exist depending on the different category, but that's one place where we are seeing a high level of adoption, interest from our customers in terms of the next set of automation happening, right? While it was till now mostly focused on inbound, outbound, and sorting operations, right? Third important thing, again, I think which Neha alluded to in terms of where are we on the fulfillment side, right? Are we talking about large fulfillment centers? Because that was the norm till about 2 years back. Right now, I think the industry, because it wants to serve the customer very quickly, we are moving towards forward fulfillment centers, right? Which have limited set of assortments in terms of SKUs they want to offer to the customer, but very high moving, right? And these are traditionally very dense, and based in a very small area. Again, the kind of automation or mechanization you would put in these centers would differ, right? And then the last thing is in terms of this entire new method of reaching directly to the customers, right? Direct to consumers, as DTC, as it is called, right? Here we've seen multiple, not only traditional brands adopting this, but we have seen even newer age brands coming in, right? And if you open an Instagram, for example, you would not have heard about those brands, but they are seeing a high volume of business, right? Whether it's in apparel category, whether it's in shoes category, whether it is in in kitchen appliances category. I think those categories are evolving. Obviously, they don't have the infrastructure, and therefore they depend on on bespoke service providers, like like a Mahindra Logistics, for example, or any of my peers. Right now, there, because it is a multi-tenant facility, right? Again, you would see a different kind of automation, right? And obviously, to stitch all these together, right? What is important is a sort of a control tower or a knob center, right?
Yeah.
So, it's very important that it's like an orchestra, right? So everything has to be orchestrated, right? Right from when your vehicles are coming in, how much time are they going to be spending on dock? If there is a contingency in terms of vehicle arrival, how do we schedule that, right? If there is a machine failure, if there's a robot failure, right? What will be the response? Right? Everything is has to be actually dependent on a control tower for a particular warehouse. So I think these are some of the things which which we are seeing as as a 3PL service provider, and we are working with our customers. And obviously partners like Armstrong are supporting us. Binoy and his team, we closely engage when we actually propose a solution to our customers on how do we kind of stitch all these together, right? So
Great.
so that's my perspective on it.
Great, Ankur. I think thank you for sharing, your perspective. I have one sub question actually, as a part of that. Now, how do you find customers reacting to it? For example, like what you precisely said, India may have around, let's say, half a dozen peak periods, the festive, related periods and so on. Now, we all know actually, like you cannot put out, in fact, best in class automation or best in class actually fulfillment center capabilities just for 6 times a year. Even if that 6 times becomes a week or even 15 days, 6 weeks or 6 fortnights do not justify that kind of an investment. So how do you kind of, handle that kind of a demand from your customer? Because come Dussehra or Diwali, customer want you to do 20x, 30x, whatever X that you can actually pull out of your bag, right? How do you manage that as a service provider?
Very interesting question, and it's actually a very interesting problem that we are trying to get our heads and solve together, right? So I think immediate response has been in terms of flex capacities. I think e-commerce as an industry has done phenomenally well in terms of understanding and acknowledging this and kind of setting up the flex capacities, right? So when we say flex capacities, these are capacities which come in for a very short duration of time, for 3 months, for 4 months, right? Now, obviously, the kind of mechanization which goes into these facilities, itself, as I said earlier, right? You start with some things which are very fungible, right? So, for example, on the inbound outbound side, when you have telescopic conveyors to load unload, right? Now, these are assets which can be cross deployed,
Yes.
right? Whether it is and they are and as we see a lot of our customers adopting, right, and instead of push, now there's a pull, right? So one way of actually doing this is anticipating some of these capacities well ahead and planning for them and getting them implemented. So we do invest in some of the more fungible sort of equipments, right? The other piece is obviously in terms of the commercial structure, right? I think the industry acknowledges that. So when I say industry, people like Armstrong and some of the other people, right? And they are actually open to a lot of different commercial models around it, right? Which are OpEx based. And therefore, we have seen some startups also coming in this space from a robotics perspective, where they are actually trying to work out if they can, offer even, for example, sorting robots, right? On a OpEx model to take care of these peakiness. So there are some of these models which we are exploring jointly with the entire ecosystem, and and I'm sure time will kind of stand testimony that we've been able to successfully solve this problem.
Great. Thank you, Ankur. I guess India as an Indian logistics as a community, I think we have come a long way from those days of like only the floor stacking. And then into the racking, and then kind of the stackers and so on, where we started using. Then we had RF actually based completely paperless warehousing, and then into probably voice. We never actually did it like abroad. Actually, most of the global retailers have had a great deal of success with the voice enabled pick pack and then even receiving and all that. We never went into that. Interestingly. So the sortation systems and then all of those things, probably there is a great degree of actually, adaptation in India. What is probably, going to be worthwhile to look after is, I think, collaborative, mobile robots or, cobots or whatever, right? So I think robots are going to probably play quite a bit of a role in the, in the future, near future, I guess. But then the battle will always remain, manual versus automation, because, let's admit, in India, because in India, we even now, we get actually manpower relatively easily. I mean, excepting COVID, I guess, most of the fulfillment centers actually probably had manned, in fact. And the recent actually even news reports say that particularly cities like Bangalore, they have been recruiting tons and tons of actually e-commerce, actually, the employees and so on, be it in the front end and the warehousing or in the delivery part side of things. So automation is definitely going to probably go upwards, and then Binoy already kind of answered most of our questions in terms of what is available with us. So quickly now, in the next 10 to 15 minutes, I would like to dwell upon on packaging. In fact, so Neha, what kind of actually sustainable packaging that we are seeing or we are going to see, and what is your experience in terms of how's the packaging journey in India? Because we were not so conscious about actually the carbon footprint, or actually the the green so-called environmental hazards and so on. We were slightly naive or ignorant to some of those things. But then all of a sudden, in the last probably few years, this has now cropped up. Now most of the online players, e-commerce giants, actually they're now going into the green packaging and so on, sustainable packaging. What is your experience in terms of, because you guys use a lot of, I guess, packaging material, because it's actually the consumer durables and so on. So what is your experience on that side?
So yes, there is definitely an increased focus and consciousness in terms of going sustainable. As Godrej Group, that has always been our priority, and we've been ahead of the curve when it comes to driving sustainable practices. And some of it is also because there's increased awareness. There is also increased compliance, because like now for plastic, right, you have to have that much of waste being redeveloped as a company, that you have to collect them, process them, and make it reusable. So some of it is also customer driven. Other is availability of alternatives is also important. Some categories it continues to be very thin, like for example, aerosol cans. They continue to remain in that format, and there's not much change happening. But otherwise, I see a lot of sustainable practices being developed, and even with customers. Like say, for example, Amazon has something called as, you developed a shipment pack together with them, which is co-branded with Godrej as well as Amazon. We haven't yet done it, but at least I know one company, which is P&G, which has already developed such co-branded packs, so that you don't have to pack it at P&G and then send it to again Amazon, who further then repacks it and then sends it back. So one is, yes, it is cost sensitive. Second is, it's also customers are also being conscious. In Amazon also, there are some reviews where customer post a photo that I just ordered a small pack and the amount of packaging that you did for me is way too much. Can you just go ahead and reduce? So slowly, steadily, yes, compliance is driving it. Companies are getting much more conscious about it in a way, and the availability of sustainable packaging solution is also very, very helpful. I mean, the way you are seeing different solutions being developed, right? In terms of printing, in terms of packing, the paper usage, I mean, all of it. Even at CFAs or warehouses that we manage, right? There's always a check that we do, that can we make our warehouses paperless? One is, it helps you move your transactions digital. Other is also, it helps you reduce those. Even other area which I see a lot of opportunity, but somewhere we have not been able to crack it as India, is driving those sustainable or renewable energy options. Like most of our factories or a lot of factories, manufacturing locations have started adapting solar power generations, etc. But I don't see that happening on warehouse space, despite most of them having very big roofs, etc. And all those things. And a lot of it is also because you will enter into short-term leases, etc. But that is probably the next wave which should catch up. But sustainable packaging is something that's going to stay, and it's something that's non-negotiable. As I see it, you will have to have ways of thinking and rethinking how can you reduce that much of plastic, go to better alternative, drive recyclable source, even collect the waste back. So we also had an interesting concept that we will put that cost onto brand. So the moment you put and make your brand conscious that this is the amount that is going into that waste, that's a collaborative drive. Otherwise, it becomes more like a supply chain, cost saving CIP project to go to this. But we started charging that cost as an environmental impact on brand P&L also. So it is more like a joint collaboration that you get, and you find the brands also to be equally this thing. And even if you see from an end consumer perspective, lot of customers are now becoming aware of the impact. So if they are given an option between alternative, they are choosing an eco-friendly alternative. So this is here to stay. And we feel much more availability of alternatives, like I gave an example of aerosol cans, is still one hurdle that we are all facing. But I think this should get solved as more development happens in this area.
Great. I mean, I remember actually, even 1.5 years ago, before COVID days, we kind of actually got rid of all the, paper packaging, all sorts of actually the use and throw kind of, stuff. And then we went into reusable ones. We went back to the steel glasses and then plates and then cutlery, all of those things, right? And there came COVID, and then all of a sudden, before we knew, we all moved into again use and throw. That's because again, because of the safety, because of actually all the 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 virus and so on, right? So it's actually a very difficult discussion. It is not actually an easy discussion to have and kind of say, okay, we have done that, we have completed that. It's not easy. So there is a lot of actually yo-yoing happening. In fact, I guess the paper bag to we went into plastic bag to paper bag to cloth bag and things like that. So it's a journey, I guess. I'm sure like Sandeep was also involved in the some of these, the packaging, making the packaging into the green packaging or sustainable packaging towards it. Sandeep, your views on that?
I think like Neha put it very appropriately, it's also sometimes when you sign up for a compliance on a country national basis, right? So now it's a compliance driven effort also. So a lot of the compliance is helping bring consciousness, and sometimes you believe that compliance also pushes people to start looking at various opportunities to look at sustainable packaging. Two core factors which are there. One is transparency. I think a lot of organizations are becoming transparent on their sustainable journey. So they are being open about it. They're taking it as something which they want to bring it on the forefront of the consumer's mind space. And that's where the consumer is starting to relate to a little better. Earlier, when things started, a lot of retail used to charge for paper bags, right? I'm replacing it, but as a penal code, if you want a paper bag, you will have to pay me this much, otherwise bring a recyclable bag. We moved away from that. Some customers, you're seeing some behavior change. From a recent experience in Southeast Asia, I think it is predominant. A lot of the consumers come with their own bags and don't take paper bags from the stores where we operate. On smaller things and initiatives which have already happened for the fulfillment part of it, and I'm saying it in basis of retail, the retail stores are extremely conscious of recycling whatever is possible back to the fulfillment center. So if you have 4 DCs supporting your fulfillment center, supporting the stores across India, then all the stores are able to recycle, let's say, even certain fundamental things like cartons. So there is no need to go and repurchase unless you have 3 or 4 cycles of those used again and again. So that consciousness has happened to the frontliner also, who's saying that, no, let me protect it, open it properly, take the conscious effort of sending it back. And these are small steps which are at least happening consistently now. Going forward, like in Bangalore, Big Basket has an option. Even if you get bananas on a carton box and if you send it back, they're more than willing to take it back. Now that whole journey of reverse planning for sustainability is also something which is a cost. But I think over a period of time, it will become normal for every single opportunity there is. So these are things which are happening on the retail side of things. Reusable material focus, and availability of alternatives is something which is ongoing. While we don't want something which is niche to be used as sustainable practice, it has to be a practice which can be rolled out. That's why not using paper is one step. Getting plastics in a different format is another step. But there is work required. So 2 core factors still there. Yes, all organizations taking a step forward, announcing their sustainable practices, so that holds everybody accountable towards it. Second is the world around us is also providing alternatives, though at a slower pace, but they are coming through, and adoption is also something which is happening faster. People on the front end are very, very clear that they have to be part of the journey, and so are the consumers. So while India might have taken a little longer, but I think the consuming class also has to play a role, saying that when you're putting a sustainable foot forward, I'm going to contribute towards that. I'm going to buy products also which are made in a sustainable manner. We announce it on our floors whenever a product is made with a sustainable thought. And there are a lot of retail organizations, especially fast fashion, who have to take it consciously, because we are under a lot of scrutiny and focus. And a lot of organizations are doing that, and they will continue to do that.
Great, Sandeep. I think there are 2 things what actually you were mentioning about recycling some of the things like carton boxes or even the clothing and all that, right? I mean, I can tell you very confident. I mean, I can definitely agree with you also on that. From my almost 16-17 years of actually global experience as well. India is probably, it was already in our DNA to recycle things. We don't throw things actually that easily at all. I mean, this has come from our grandmothers, great grandmothers, and all of them, right? So we are masters in recycling actually. The current problem has come in only when we are using a lot of plastics, because people, can't recycle plastic that easily. And then some of these plastic that, we are using right during our e-commerce actually journey or e-commerce evolution is not that easily kind of, disposable also. I mean, I can go out and then probably bring, take out 50 probably the, envelopes or actually the poly covers actually from my previous, e-commerce impact deliveries and so on, right? I mean, it's not an easy answer. I mean, they all end up actually in the garbage actually truck or the landfills and so on, which is probably a bad thing for the, environment. But then I guess, like the journey, what you explained, I guess, we'll have to probably adopt the journey and kind of, tread that and then find some common solutions actually between probably the consumers, retailers, and even some of the manufacturers and also the policy makers as well, I guess, right? So thank you for that perspective. Ankur, what are your customers saying? I mean, like, I'm sure, your customers might be giving, some of your actually retail customers are giving probably, okay, we'll go to green now, green actually packaging now. But then, at the fulfillment center, that's going to take a lot more time for you to pack it, and then your productivity is, is going down and so on. So what are your experiences on sustainable packaging and the effect on you?
Right. So I think we need to look at the entire packaging. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes. So I think we need to look at the entire packaging in a in a very different context, right? And that's where I would like to actually bring in a commercial context, right? We talked about how in e-commerce returns is a big issue, right? And you would be surprised that for a particular category, the reason for returns was actually outer package damage, right? And therefore, a lot of investments are made by my customers to ensure that you have the right set of package going to the customer, because you don't want the customer to be rejecting the package just because there are small, there is some problem with the packaging on it, right? Second, obviously, is not only look at the packaging from that perspective, also look at it from a perspective that if suppose customer rejects a package, right, in case he doesn't want, right, or let's say a size is not fitting or there's some other issue, right, this package also needs to be, or this particular shipment also needs to be reinventorized, right?
Yes.
Obviously. So that is another angle which we should look at it. And actually, when you put together all the costs of these different things, you realize that the investment which is being therefore now made in packaging is, or the focus which has now gone in packaging is increased manifold, right? And obviously, then there are issues with respect to sustainability of packaging. There are a lot of customers of ours who have taken zero waste targets, and therefore each of these packaging, first of all, needs to be recycled or needs to be disposed of in an environmentally responsible manner, and therefore the entire supply chain around it is also actually getting developed, right? So who would be, for example, whom would you give out the carton? You would not want to give out a cart, to a person or an entity who's just going to throw it and it's going to find its way in the landfill, right? So you need to have the right set of agencies who will scientifically dispose of a particular waste which is getting generated. So there are multiple, I said, multiple dimensions to it. Another interesting example is the entire grocery piece, right? You've seen the adoption of totes, for example, in the grocery deliveries. Unlike earlier, where you would have some of the groceries coming to you in carton packages, you would see oil leaking out of it, right? Again, it's a bad customer experience, right? Now that with the introduction of totes, there another level of complexity to it, right? You need to have, you need to wash these totes, right? Or you need to kind of, ensure that before they go out to the customer, there's an inspection which is done, right, for the entire packaging itself, right? So these are there are multiple things, depending on the category in which you are in, which is happening around, around the entire sustainability initiative, and or around the packaging initiative from a sustainability perspective. So we see that going forward, multiple dimensions will come together, and you will see a far more environmentally suitable, supply chain suitable, because it will be handled, at multiple legs, from FC to middle mile to a last mile station, right till the place where the shipment will be delivered to the.
Right. Right.
Hello.
Yeah.
Anil, I seem to have lost the audio. Can you continue, please? I'll just see what's the issue.
Okay, no worries actually. So, I mean, thanks Ankur, thanks for that actually. And then let me just straight jump into, a question which probably can be put to Binoy. I mean, I think one of our audience actually has asked a question about, Mr. Nagendra Ashwat has asked a question about, in a developing country like India, is sustainability consciously high on the agenda of fulfillment centers, or is it getting subconsciously compromised? It's a very good question, I guess. Binay, if you can answer that, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice question. Just to give it a little bit of a simplified answer to that would be that the trends are changing. Consumer buying patterns are changing. And with this changing buying patterns, the first objective would be to ensure that you are keeping in mind the customer needs and their expectations. So first, we are trying to fulfill their needs, trying to ensure that the ecosystem from the standpoint of delivering the goods to the customer is being kept as a top priority. Coming back to the point of sustainability compromise, it's a development journey. It's a journey that we all are going through. I'm sure that at the moment, there could be some compromises happening, keeping in mind the focus as customer experience first. But nevertheless, the time to come ahead, I foresee that a lot of initiatives have been taken place by the government, by the individual e-commerce companies in terms of creating sustainable packaging materials, in terms of reducing the usage of plastic and jiffies and moving towards recyclable paper. As Ankur said, that we'll be now shifting to totes for grocery, etc. Reducing the usage of cartons inside the fulfillment centers for up and down movement, etc. A lot of warehouses are now even moving towards solar and all these sort of technologies by which they can reduce their carbon footprint, etc. So I feel that overall things are improving. It will take its own time, but I'm sure that this is there on the radars of the e-commerce companies to actually keep it in mind and focus on these areas as well. Yes.
Thanks, Binay. I think thanks, Binay. Thanks for that. There's another question from Mr. Gopalakrishnan. Gopalakrishnan is asking actually, direct to consumer model and B2C model. What is the fulfillment services difference is what he's asking. Neha, if you can answer that, please. Direct to consumer model and B2C model. What's the fulfillment service difference?
Direct to consumer is something that's still developing. Like if you say, I mentioned it, but as Godrej, are we reaching to our customers directly?
Yeah.
We do have a website through which they can place an order in Bhutan, but it's far and few and very, very less in terms of. But what do we mean by direct to consumer is direct to retail outlets. So I am just changing one leg of my supply chain, which is if I was going through from my warehouse or DC to a distributor and from there to a retail, we are reaching retail directly. Direct to consumer is something that is still a while ago. It will take some time because B2C is something that we are still not ready. It would continue to be B2, B2C. You would first from your warehouses give it to retailer, and then from there it will go. But that's happening. I mean, so there are a lot of like I'll give you example, lot of medical stores because there has been very good evaluation of medical stores because they apparently come under essentials. And now if you walk into a good medical store in a good metro, they not just house medicines, but they house lot of other things. And because they were under essentials, they kind of started. They are doing centralized purchase. They are now chain of medical stores, and they do have an app through which a customer can put it. So a lot of time they are also giving that linkage to companies to put and directly get those orders and serve via nearest of the DCs. So that is also happening, and there are a lot of hybrid ways by people are doing like JioMart is coming up with. JioMart has a model where you have an order which gets to the nearest store. If inventory is not available to the nearest stores, it goes to the nearest stockist or a distributor who has that, and from there you do the fulfillment. But it's still very nascent, far and few, I would say. The current reach, even direct to retail per se, is also early single digits. It's not something that has been very massive. Most of the companies are in a pilot stage, doing it in couple of metros. But I see that scaling up very much faster, because again, distributor as an ecosystem is facing a lot of crunch, both in terms of manpower, space, inventory management, etc., etc. In hence, you would want, and other good advantage that you get as companies, you get direct access to offtake data,
Great,
right?
great.
Which is much more better than getting it land, but it's still far away. At least
Great.
first step would be direct to retail, and then it would be direct to customer.
Great. Thanks, Neha. Thanks for that. I think there's another question actually from Dr. Ramesh Chandra Biswal. This is an RFID, I guess. And RFID used for inventory management and also as an essential tech and so on. So Sandeep, because you have actually had some insight into the RFID, in your previous stint, as well as I guess Shoppers was one of the first companies, to kind of do some pilots also on RFID. Any quick thoughts on RFID adaptation in Indian retail scenario?
So I think RFID has been in the discussion and the mode of getting consumer connect for some time now. I think in India, at least last 3 years, I think I've seen a lot more activity than what it was earlier. But overall, I still believe that, like Neha was putting it, for direct to customer as a roadmap which is under progress, I think it is also taken baby steps as of now. A lot of organizations are trialing it in terms of how it will fit in the overall model. Because I said it's an ecosystem. So the ecosystem has to work to accept RFID. It is not about one apparel manufacturer putting an RFID tag and then it goes through to all kinds of retailers and gets distributed. If the retail company does not have an RFID infrastructure, they would want the manufacturer to again go back and do a different kind of tag. So as the ecosystem evolves to accepting RFID as a way forward, then more value will be generated out of it. But some organizations are looking at it because it has sustainable benefits on better forecasting, better cost control on managing inventory, which are bigger challenges for a lot of the organizations who are looking at scaling up at a scale. So that will continue to happen. But on an overall basis, how fast it will grow will also depend on how the overall infrastructure and the ecosystem is ready to adapt to the RFID way of doing things, because it is also about supply of the automation required to convert RFID modules within the premises, both in fulfillment center as well as the endpoint. How cost effective it is, because finally cost is going to be a consideration. There are benefits which we have seen in my earlier organization when it was implemented, and it pays off for itself. So it needs a little more convincing in terms of case studies coming out, people being able to share the solutions which have happened. It's a journey. I think it takes some time before it becomes extremely common. It has not become so abroad also. So it has been successful in some pockets of kinds of retail, if I speak about retail, but in not all kinds of formats as of now.
Great. Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks for that. I mean, RFID is concerned, I guess that itself is probably, topic of a conference, I guess, for about half a day. It's a huge topic. And also I remember, working with RFID when the first truck rolled out actually into Walmart way back in the early 2000s. I was actually a part of that team which received at the Walmart DC. So RFID adoption actually has not been as, as fast as what one would have expected. But that's definitely, there on the cards. But then as Sandeep mentioned, the pricing and then ROI is actually probably that's a critical part which needs to be cracked actually from the Indian context. The next question from Akanksha Narayan. This is regarding actually any example where sustainable and last mile delivery friendly packaging was done as a joint effort by retailers, logistics partners, and brands. Maybe Ankur, you can actually answer this. Was there any sustainable and last mile delivery friendly packaging was done as a joint effort by retailers and logistic partners?
Right, Anil. So, Anil, as I was highlighting in the earlier example, when you talk about the entire grocery delivery, right, the way it used to happen earlier, where you would receive some of the shipments in carton packaging, and it would be actually in a damaged condition, or you would have layers and layers of fillers in it, right, which again led to a bad customer experience. And I think that's where logistics companies, some of the online platforms, and working even backwards to the brands have really worked together, and ensured that how do they actually work on this. So from a customer experience perspective, there is no there is no impact, right? And that's how the entire use of tote, collapsible totes, etc. I think it's a great example of collaboration across the across the chain, which is a good example. Another is I'm sure you would have read about consumer durables becoming also actually being one of the fastest growing category in the e-commerce chain. Right? That's another example where we have worked along with the brand as well as the partners to ensure that when the customer gets his shipment, whether it's a refrigerator or a television, it is without any damage, because those are all those are packages where it is left with the customer, and then there is an installation team which comes in. So you imagine a scenario where you have a TV coming to your house, and once somebody who's coming to install it opens it and finds there's a panel which is damaged, or a refrigerator where there's a dent, right? So obviously I think there are multiple examples like this where the entire ecosystem has worked together and ensured that the right experience is provided to the end consumer.
Great, great. Thanks, Ankur. Thanks for that. There are last couple of questions. I guess, we are already running short of time. Mr. Ajay Kumar has actually been asking this probably, Binoy, maybe you can help us actually to answer this. So what he's saying is actually, we are talking about innovation actually and fulfillment and so on with actually a particular segment of actually the industry, whereas 70% of warehousing for commodity, non-branded products happen in more orthodox manner, he says. So do you see that industry changing or organized player entering that market where 70% of warehousing for commodity of non-branded happens?
Yes, Anil. I mean, I completely understand that. Yes, there is a lot of unorganized sector that is there at the background who's running the show and who's contributing also to the overall e-commerce market. But indeed, the trend is changing because, as I said earlier as well, that people are now focusing upon how to reduce their costs, let it be from an operation standpoint, and how they can bring in efficiency in their overall operations. The trend has been a little bit slow from their end to cope up with the way organized companies like the giants have been working around. But we are seeing a change of the overall trend in the way they are managing their fulfillment centers. Rather than going for a complete high-end automation, they are indeed going for some mid-level automation, which could be comprising of basic conveying systems, some scanning systems, and some right softwares by which they are at least capturing some data, and some basic truck loading systems, etc. So in any way, in a small way, they are getting accustomed to this thing. And it's all about getting habitual to these technologies. And the day you get accustomed and addicted to such technologies, the way the business is growing, I'm very sure that they would be also transferring themselves into an organized way of investing in high-end automation technologies as well. So that the trend is there, it's on the path. Only thing is, it's on a little bit of a slower pace as compared to the organized e-com companies. Yeah.
Great, Binoy. Thanks for clarifying that. Actually, Mr. Sagar Bhore, he actually asked about damages on white goods, which I guess Ankur has just answered that question. Mr. Sagar, I hope actually you are happy with that answer, because he specifically talked about how they can co-brand and collaborate actually with the brands, to reduce the damages of white goods and so on. He just gave an example on that. So the other question, it says, how this is from Sarvapriya Sonal. How does return policy compare to Amazon and cost to the company? I mean, I guess this is again a very, very large topic, Sarvapriya ji. I guess, returns have become a big problem for most of the people in India, because India is one of the very few countries where returns are at no cost to the customer. Every other country, there is definitely a cost to return. Therefore, there are actually some governance around that. Whereas in India, retailers actually have literally spoiled, if you ask me as an e-commerce retailer, we have literally spoiled our customer by accepting the free, return, no questions asked return and so on. And even sometimes, even the duration is quite a bit. So it is definitely costing a lot of money to the online retailers right now. And then costs actually vary between company to company. The approximate actually the idea is around actually anywhere between 20 to 35% actually returns percentage is currently there. So you can imagine how much would that be costing actually for most of the retailers anyway. The last question is from Mr. Umashankar. can you explain about FIFO in e-commerce? I guess, you know, in e-commerce, if there are lot, you know, or a shelf life expiry related or lot sensitive, actually lots are there, then definitely these things will come into effect. Otherwise, typically, I guess these are some of the things, you know, which are already managed by actually some of the systems. Neha, do you have anything to say on these FIFO based, you know, operations in e-commerce, actually, particularly on the, you know, consumer sector?
Most of it would be shelf life based, as you rightly said. And how do they even control it? They have a very high entry barrier itself. Like they will accept the stock only which has more than 70% shelf life left.
Yeah.
So, so the freshness at that first hurdle itself is taken care of, and then of course there is automated audit that happens, and batch wise check that happens in, and you keep shelf life on a parity. On FMCG space, it's not that big an impact because our products at least will have a year or 2 year as shelf life available. It is more on perishable where you have to keep a very strong check, where you might have something like, say, a milk, right, which has only 2 days, or a bread which has less than 4 days of shelf life. How do you keep that churning out? But lot of it is through that entry barrier itself, and they have good shelf life control in place.
Great, great. I mean, thank you so much, actually, all the panelists. In fact, I think we have run our time actually a little bit over. I mean, I think it was wonderful from Binoy, and then great actually examples from, you know, Ankur as well. Sandeep, always a pleasure to actually, you know, have you on the panel, and then kind of, you know, share your experiences not only in India but also from Southeast Asia and GCC and so on. And then Neha, of course, on side of the, you know, consumer goods. I think it was a great learning for all of us. You've been wonderful, actually, you know, panelists on this panel. And then thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And I hope we have done the justice actually for this, you know, session. I guess we have also left some pointers. In fact, how do we go about creating the best in class, you know, fulfillment centers and so on. So thank you very much, you know, once again for your participation. And thank you, Institute of Logistics and CIA, for organizing this. Thank you very much, and we'll sign off. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.